to another exciting and very insightful day of deliberations and conversations on the way forward. It's very clear, the target is clear. The PSST told us yesterday, it's a 10-fold growth that we have to achieve. The how is why we are here. We started this conversation yesterday, and great conversations through the entire morning and the afternoon, and quite an exciting engagement online that we will also have today. So you will prepare your menti.com, not now, but later, where we will be sharing your feedback. For those of you left earlier, at the end of day one, we asked a very interesting question. We asked the one word people would use to describe yesterday's conversations or yesterday's discussions, and it was quite interesting. For me, the best word I picked from there was Ifris enlightening. It was Ifris enlightening, and I think that was the PSST's conversation. I'm not sure it is, and they made sure there was a hyphen in between, so it was one word, not two words. We said one word to describe the conversations yesterday. So I will be hoping we can have that also later today. So to run through a bit of protocol, I want to recognize, of course, the presence of our Country Director, the IGC, Dr. Richard Newfarmer, our Permanent Secretary and Secretary of the Treasury, Ramadan Gobi. I have a problem. I always add an N before the G, but I'm trying these days to avoid the N. Our Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government, Benjamin Kumumanya. Arriving, of course, is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Ms. Doreen Katsime, and of course, our Special Advisor to the President. I'm not sure, we should be starting with Her Excellency, Honorable Susan Mwezi. The directors of the various agencies who are here, our heads of the different departments and agencies in government. I have seen members of the armed forces. We have members of the civil society organizations, our partners, CS Bank, partners to the Ministry of Finance are represented here. We have friends from the different private sector organizations and, of course, friends of Uganda. So you're most welcome to day two, and it will be quite an exciting conversation. But first, I thought we would have a highlight of day one. So I'll ask the technical team to share with you the highlights of day one in case you missed it yesterday. I want, on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and on behalf of the IGC, to welcome you for this 8th High-Level Economic Growth Forum. Our theme, Seizing Opportunities for Structural Transformation to Increase Productivity and Resilience.
This forum this year is intended to discuss ways through which we can harness opportunities for achieving the envisioned growth, which is tenfold. We would want to see double-digit growth per annum.
We are now resolved to grow this economy tenfold in the next 15 years. And this is an ambitious program. As Dr. Richard was saying, it requires sacrifice and it requires commitment to achieving it by all of us, the stakeholders.
Increasing investment requires finance, including tax revenues and foreign finance. I look forward to the discussion in this conference that will review both of those opportunities for increasing revenues and obtaining foreign finance.
The PDM opportunity can become a sustainable driver of what we want to achieve, tourism. And it is something that we need to focus on and see it as a springboard for growth.
Reducing the cost of doing business, improving governance. We have to change the way we do business. Once we build consensus around this, then we shall achieve the tenfold.
The key is, are we creating good jobs? And is that allowing individuals to move across this arc of development?
We needed to think so much to invest in the health what? In the health sector, such that we can have a healthy population, a healthy labor force.
Number one, to improve resilience and productivity of the agriculture sector.
We have to have a mechanism, an operating mechanism on how the whole structure will function.
The effects of EFRIs must be given time because they will grow gradually in generating revenues to finance the 10-fold growth.
What we are interested in is really service delivery. So the implementation stage of projects is key.
Mobilize funds to finance investment as well as raise productivity.
So that was day one, and somebody did state, and PS, I totally agree, and we will have to work with Dr. Albert on this, that the conversations were extremely technical, very highly educative, and I think if we picked the observations of the room yesterday evening when we were looking at the small highlights of day one, it was very clear that maybe we packed too much information, and Dr. Albert's biggest problem now is how to ensure that the next forum doesn't have too much content within the shortest time period. So we had about 1.5 hours for every session. It should have been more. And then you had about 4 papers that must be looked at in that 1.5 hours, and open to questions from the audience or plenary here, which was difficult for the very first 2 sessions. And we had to do that immediately after lunch. And that was a bit complicated. We could only take as many as 10 questions, and which was unfair. The best part, which I think Dr. Richard is exciting, was that we had people participating and sharing their feedback with us on menti.com if we gave them options. But what was also exciting was that we left a space for you to give us your own opinion, especially for some of the questions we asked. So there was a platform shared where somebody could give their own alternative view on the options that had been provided. And I run to thank the technical team that were able to put this together and allow for people to share their views. The key highlight for us, and the PS local government should hear this because he superintends over the biggest space under the local governments, is that people are more interested in accountability. So they're saying, yes, we're willing and happy to pay. In fact, I think one of the delegates said, Ugandans are happy to pay the tax, but they want to see value for money. It was very clear from the presentations. And of course, PSST's biggest challenge is to increase productivity and, of course, drive efficiency in government. And so that was what really came out of the conversations yesterday, and we can't wait for today's conversations. Lawrence, do we have Menti in the morning, or we move to the first session? We have? All right, so here's where it gets exciting. We have our very first question for the day. All right, post the question. And we want, or maybe the QR code first. Okay, so we have the option. I want your smartphones out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we start when you're still very sharp in the morning. Scan the QR code or go to menti.com. So if you go to menti.com, it will ask you for a code, and that's the code we're using. You could write it somewhere because we use the same code through the day. So 1459 or 1949 and then 1553. I noticed some people yesterday when they asked for their opinion and their one word, that's the code they posted, the one word they posted. Please don't post that later. That's your access code, all right? So here is where we go, and I want to see you register. How many are in now? 22, all right, let's go. 24, 26. Okay, so I'm hoping everyone is in. If you're just walking in, we're already on menti.com. Your neighbor will tell you. All right, question. There you go. Lawrence, yesterday's font looked a bit better. What is happening today? I'm now complaining about fonts. We are saying, what should government do to move all households from the subsistence to the market economy? Big question. And the PSST, I'm sure, is evaluating these questions because you can clearly tell these are his headaches every morning. How do we move our households from subsistence to the market economy? And we have the 4 options. I can't read them from here, so I'll try and read from here. decentralize the actions to local governments and set targets for them. 2, PDM implementation. 3, invest more in strategies to increase household earnings from agriculture. And then the last one is mindset change. So those are the 4 options we have. Dr. Albert yesterday said, I wanted the bar graph. Dr. Albert, we have brought the bar graph because yesterday I think the percentage wasn't working for you. It is the bar graph you wanted. Okay, so the 4 options are on your screen. You are able to see them. Please vote. 41 have voted. 43, 45. PSST, they're saying maybe we should work with the Electoral Commission and do this so that people don't spend too much time at the polling station. And we will save time. And it's more accountable. All right. And we might hack it. I agree, PS. Okay, 59. That's a good percent. 69 of you here. And the biggest percentage, 41%. PS, local government. I think we are doing some of the homework for you. We are saying invest more in strategies to increase household earnings from agriculture. Clearly, the biggest bulk of our people are in agriculture. 68. Can we hit 70? Then I move to the panel. 69. 70. All right. So you can continue voting. If you have a neighbor who comes in, let them know that we are already voting. This will remain active until the session has ended. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, our very first panel discussion this morning could never have been more exciting because the question posed relates to what the conversation will be looking at. And we are looking at transforming subsistence farming into urban growth. And we are going to have the PS, so the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government, as the chair of this session. What I would like to do is quickly run through the profiles of our panelists as I invite them to the front. And I will invite Dr. Victor Kotor. I'm not so sure, or professor, because I noticed there's doctor on one side and then there's professor on the other. Dr. Richard, I'm not sure. So professor? Okay, let's go with the higher one. Professor Victor Kotor. Professor, please come and back to the stage. He's an associate professor at the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management and the Camrost Philcop Chair in Real Estate. Prior to joining the University of Toronto, he was a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and the University of British Columbia. Professor Kotor's research focuses on housing, gentrification, transportation, homelessness, remote work, and residential segregation. And his public speaking is often on the impact of recent urban trends on real estate markets. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Victor. Our other panelist is Dr. Faminas Mugumya from Makerere University. As Doctor comes to the front, Doctor is a social worker with a strong teaching and research focus on social development, community development, social change with an engaged scholarship approach. He holds a PhD with a specialty in community development system governance from the School of Law and Government in Dublin, in the Dublin City University of Ireland, a Master's of Arts degree in Development Studies with a specialty in local and regional development from the Erasmus International Institute of Social Studies in the Netherlands, and of course a bachelor's degree in social work and social administration from Makerere University. He's currently teaching at the Department of Social Work and Social Administration, SWASA, School of Social Sciences, Makerere University here in Kampala. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Faminas Mugumya. And our discussant today is none other than Miss Juliana Olivier. I will stay away from the last name just to make, Dr. Richard, if I make a mistake on that. Miss Juliana, please make your way. I just need to make sure, yes, she's coming. Works as a policy economist for the Cities That Work initiative at the International Growth Center, IGC, based at the London School of Economics. The initiative aims to bridge the gap between economic research and policy making in developing countries by translating robust evidence into clear urban policy guidance. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Juliana Olivier. And once again, welcome with me the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government, Mr. Benjamin Kumumanya. Ladies and gentlemen, our chair for this morning's session. Chair, I notice your session says you will lead us to a coffee break at 10:45. That is exactly 1 hour, 20 minutes from now. That means technically that each of your panelists has about 20 to 25 minutes and your discussant 10 minutes. The rest of that I will manage with you, PS, but the timer for the panelists is here and the discussant. So the moment it rings a bell, your time is out. And PS, I've done the homework for you. The timer will help you. You don't have to even tell them 2 minutes to go. They can see how much time they have. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome with us, our very first session.
Thank you very much, our moderator, for this morning, Mr. Mujisha. Like you have heard, I have three distinguished scholars here in front of us who will take us through a three-ring 45-minute intellectual discussion on urbanization, transforming subsistence farming into urban growth. So since we are still fresh, I don't want to take more time. I want now to jump and ask Dr. Kutra to please take on the audience. Very fresh, very ready for you. Doctor.
All right, good morning, everyone. So first, I'm very grateful to the organizers for inviting me to present my work. I've already learned so much from the presenters and the discussions we've had, and it's just a pleasure to be here in Kampala for a few days. Today, I'll be talking about urbanization, and I'll try to cover a lot of ground, so I'll be painting with broad strokes. I'll discuss how urbanization brings benefits that yields returns over many years, but also challenges such as congestion, pollution, and expensive housing. So my talk will be in two parts. First, the benefits of urbanization, and second, the cost. I'll try to leave a policy message. Oh, I'm switching my slides. Yeah. I'll try to leave a policy message, accommodate, ameliorate, and associate. So accommodate by planning for urban growth, ameliorate to reduce urban dysfunctions, and associate, meaning thinking of cities as part of a system, not as isolated units. Okay, so let's get right into it. So the figure shows that GDP grows faster in more urbanized countries. Each dot in the plot is a country. So the horizontal axis shows urbanization in 1960. The vertical axis shows GDP growth from 1960 to 2010. So more urbanized countries grew faster over the next half century. This is what we mean by urbanization delivers returns over many decades. The next figure shows that wages are higher in larger cities. So each of these plots is for a different country. So clockwise, we have USA, Brazil, China, and India. Each dot in the figure is a city. The horizontal axis is population density. The vertical axis is wage per worker. And then you see a positive relationship between population density and wages in almost every country we look at, perhaps somewhat weaker in China. The next figure shows that productivity is lower in agriculture, especially in less urbanized country. Each dot in the plot is a country. On the horizontal axis, you have the non-agricultural labor share. So near the origin, you have countries where almost everyone works in agriculture, and Uganda is there. On the vertical axis, you have output per worker, so productivity, with agricultural productivity in green and non-agricultural productivity in blue. So each country has a blue dot and a green dot. And there are two main facts from this plot. The first fact is that there's a large gap between agricultural productivity and non-agricultural productivity. This is true in every country. The second fact is that this gap is even larger in countries where almost everyone works in agriculture. So this means that if you have a ton of workers in rural areas working in farming, they're likely highly unproductive. And this echoes some of the discussion we've had yesterday about structural change outside of agriculture being the first step towards economic growth. This should be, I mean, it is, there are Nepal and Uganda, if you see in green. The pointer doesn't quite work, but on this plot, it has a little bit like less than 10% non-agricultural worker. This is a plot from another paper, but thank you, I should have highlighted it. Okay. Moving forward, so wages are higher in cities than in rural areas, unsurprisingly, given the plot I just showed. And specifically in Uganda, this is using data from 2011, so more than a decade ago, but urban workers earn 61% more than rural workers, and this is not due to working more hours. So urban workers are more productive. And it's also the case that within cities, larger cities have higher productivity and wages than smaller cities. In a typical country, the largest city will have 50 to 100% higher wages than the smallest city. Okay, so now why are people more productive in cities? There are two reasons, according to empirical evidence, looking at people moving across cities. First is that cities make people more productive directly. Second is also that more productive people are moving to cities. So now, why are city workers more productive? What is it about cities that make people more productive? There is evidence for three main mechanisms: learning, sharing, and matching. So let me describe all three. Learning, so if I move to a city and I meet you, you teach me how to build something, you show me how to build something, that knowledge exchange makes me more productive. So those kind of knowledge transfer interactions happen all the time in cities when people bump into one another. So learning faster is one of the reasons why people in cities are more productive. This also explains why almost all innovation happens in cities. The second mechanism is sharing. So larger cities have larger markets, so people can share resources. So for instance, in a small town, a cement factory may not have enough customers to be profitable. But in a larger city like Kampala, the market is larger. Many construction businesses need cement, so the market is large enough to support the cement factory, and consumers share in the benefit of cheaper cement. The third mechanism is matching. So if there are more workers to choose from in a larger city, you're likely to find a better match for your needs. So for instance, there's unlikely to be an expert in, say, heat-resistant concrete in a small town. But in a large city like Kampala, you'll have 3 or 4 of those people you can talk to and meet your needs. So these are similar to the benefits of specialization, those benefits from matching. And again, urbanization benefits can spread to other areas if workers and firms are mobile and free to move across the country. Okay, so one important point I wanted to make before moving on to the cost is that rural migration generally, not always, benefits the mover. So for instance, in Bangladesh, people have measured gains from 20 to 40%. But this migration may not be efficient because people consider their own personal benefit when they move to a city, not societal gain or losses. So they don't take into account how they'll make people more productive by sharing knowledge with them. For instance, they also don't take into account how they may harm other people by contributing to congestion and pollution. Okay, so that was for the benefits of urbanization. Let me now talk briefly about the cost. So larger cities, again, make people more productive, but there are associated urban costs, namely housing cost. Housing becomes more expensive, congestion and travel costs, and crime, pollution, diseases, and so on. So let me first talk about housing. One empirical fact is that housing space expands fast as economies grow. As people get richer, they have bigger houses. As firms get larger, there are bigger factories, larger retail spaces, bigger offices. And this actually happens at an accelerating rate. So if Uganda's economy was to grow tenfold, then total housing space and volume would have to rise more than tenfold. So this means that there's going to be a very large urban expansion, huge growth in the construction sector, and all of this needs to be planned for. For instance, the construction industry, a few people will get fantastically rich from that growth, and there's risk of corruption and financial risk. This is happening in China, where the construction sector was more than a quarter of the total economy. And as a country urbanizes, it usually will expand outward, meaning low-rise buildings. Tall buildings can save space, but they generally happen as countries get richer and cities get a lot denser because they're very expensive. So there needs to be planning for outward expansion, because this is typically what's going to happen. So let me move from housing cost to travel cost. Here, this figure shows, this is a graph from my own work, showing that car travel is faster in richer countries. So each dot in the plot is a different country. Uganda is not there because there's not enough large cities to measure at the country level, but it would be towards the left. Kampala is very slow. So each dot is a country. The horizontal axis is GDP per capita, so how rich the country is. The vertical axis is travel speed, and we find that richer countries are much faster. And this is both due to richer countries having more major roads that are fast, so like dual carriage roads like motorways, and also to richer countries being less dense. So as I've just said, like richer people use more space, and the more objects, pedestrians, and things there are in the street to impede traffic, the slower it's going to be. Here, still on travel costs, one point I'd like to get across is that congestion is not the main reason for slow travel, and this plot shows that. So on the vertical axis, you have hours of the day from midnight, 0 on the left, to late in the evening on the right. On the vertical axis, you have travel speed, and each bar and each line in the plot is a different city. At the very top, you see the fastest city in the world. This is Flint, Michigan, in the United States. At the very bottom, you see the slowest city in the world with the slowest car travel. This is Dhaka in Bangladesh. And you can see that congestion is not the main reason why Dhaka is slow. From midnight to 4 a.m., when there are very few cars on the road, there's no congestion, Dhaka is still very, very slow. In red, you see Kampala. So Kampala's speed is about the same as Addis Ababa throughout the day. Kampala is substantially slower than, for instance, Kigali. And it's also, at night, it's slower than Nairobi, meaning that Nairobi, when there's no car on the road, has better road infrastructure. Nairobi is a lot more congested, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Being more congested means people are a bit richer, they can afford a car, and there's economic activity, so people are driving around. We've done a lot of work comparing Kampala using very detailed data to other African cities. I'm not showing this work today with limited time, but just catch me around in the conference if you're interested in hearing more. But here the lesson is that Kampala needs better road infrastructure. Just trying to reduce congestion won't make much of a difference because Kampala is very slow even when there's no car on the street. Just saying a little bit more on that, Kampala has many attributes of slow cities. It has high population density, that's very important, and you can see it when you walk around, right? The more people, the more objects, the more buildings, parked cars there are in the street, the slower traffic is gonna be. That's unavoidable. It's true in Uganda, it's true in the United States, it's true in India. There are relatively few major roads, fast road types in Kampala. That's also an important factor. And there are lesser factors also, like Kampala doesn't have a regular grid network, so there's lots of roads that don't follow the main grid orientation. It's a convoluted road network. It's crossed by a lot of water bodies, which makes the engineering harder. That said, there are many cities with similar characteristics to Kampala that we can observe that are faster. So there must be something else going on. For instance, roundabouts instead of red lights slowing people down, people not following norms of best practice norms in terms of driving. Why do we care about slow transportation? Well, not everyone lives within 5 minutes of good jobs and productive peers. And so to access these jobs and these peers, you need fast transportation. To realize the benefits of cities, you need fast transportation because cities are about bringing people in closer proximity together. So again, for this learning to happen, for better matches to happen, for input sharing to happen, people need to be able to go places. Now, one last consideration before I conclude is that urban costs tend to rise faster if a city is geographically constrained, for instance, by mountains or water bodies. This is based on evidence from France and the United States. If a city cannot expand outward, the efficient city size is likely smaller. But when a city can expand outward, as Kampala mostly can, urban costs and agglomeration benefit tend to rise meaning the benefit and cost of city tend to rise at similar rates. So cities can get very large without too much inefficiency. Okay, let me conclude. I've done really well on time. After yesterday, I really did not want to go over. So let me conclude with the policy implications. First, accommodate for urban growth, meaning plan for urbanization. Even with all its challenges, more urbanization is almost certainly better than no urbanization. Second, prepare for urban expansion, and actually if tenfold growth happens, massive urban expansion and huge growth in the construction sector. And finally, accommodate by improving transportation infrastructure. The second A, ameliorate urban issues. Here, I haven't spent enough time in Kampala to know all the specific urban issues, but land registries, waste management, that I know is an issue. P.S. Dr. Lukwago yesterday was telling me about the Kitizi garbage landslide, so that's an example of the smaller set of issues that needs to be ameliorated for the benefit of cities to be realized. And the final point is associate. So think of cities as part of a system. So there are interdependencies. For instance, roads and electricity work together. The benefit of paved roads are higher when electricity is available. There's empirical evidence for that. Promote skilled labor mobility within cities. People learn new trade, new skills in a large city. They can move to a smaller city and share what they've learned there and make everyone there more productive. Improve access and encourage firms to consider smaller cities. Again, firms need to be free to choose where they locate, but they need to have option to go to smaller cities that might specialize in what that particular firm needs. And finally, Kampala is what's called a primate city, meaning it's orders of magnitude. It's many times larger than the next largest city. For instance, in the United States, New York is not even twice the size of LA. Kampala is many times the size of the next largest city. So it's a primate city, meaning that most urban growth in Uganda is likely to happen in Kampala, and this needs to be accounted for. So I'll just stop here and I'll thank everyone for your attention, and I'll be very happy to follow up after with anyone who's interested. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Victor Kutra, for that elaborate presentation. I just wish to remind ourselves that when we talk about urban centers in Uganda, urban centers in Uganda are structured under 4 strata. We have KCCA, which he concentrated on. That's an authority. It's in its own shape. We have 10 cities, which we actually put in place trying to decongest Kampala to reduce on the slowness and the denseness that he mentioned about that Kampala is. And then we have secondary cities, 31, the Kobokos, the Chisolos, and many others. And then we have 580 town councils, Chahafi at the border with Congo, we have Ruerere, we have Ajumani, and many others. So we are talking about need to have an investment that can really start with Kampala, but be able to cover all these areas and provide the relevant services that are needed for these urban authorities to respond to the urban population. Urban population grows every day simply because whatever little that is available for mankind is more available in these urban centers, because comparatively there are better facilities than anywhere else. But of course, when now the demand is more than the supply, then of course you get congestion, and of course you get a number of these issues. So as we plan for a tenfold, I think we need to look at how do we invest, starting with Kampala. I would want to see Kampala having all required facilities, ICT, tourism facilities, road network, like the ones in Tocho. Tocho, on one hand, seems to be congested, but on the other hand, there is everything to answer every need that is in that place. So thank you very much, Victor, for bringing out these issues very, very clearly. I think we need to look at smart urbanization. That word must be emphasized in our tenfold effort to make sure that whatever is done, whatever investment is done is aiming at smart urbanization. So thank you very much, Victor, for this elaborate presentation. Maurice, do we first have a discussion or we first go through all the 3? Very good, thank you. So let me call upon the next presenter to come and take us through Dr. Mugumya and give you a presentation. When you saw the voting, you saw that investing in agriculture is one of the ways that we'll deal with the issues that will fit us in the growth. PDM was launched. PDM is emphasizing investment in agriculture. We have already selected 7 major or main investment areas, and I'm sure Dr. Mugumya will talk about them. It's not that we are investing in agriculture in everything. We want to invest in agriculture in the quick wins. And these 7, for refreshing our minds as we receive Dr. Mugumya's presentation, are coffee, dairy, food crops, fruits, poultry, piggery, and aquaculture. So we think that once you invest in those areas, the hanging fruits will be good. So Dr. Mugumya, you are most welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name once again, Faminas Mugumya. I'm honored and privileged to be part of this conference to speak about the opportunity, and one of the opportunities in we are trying to look at as part of the greater call or cause for the tenfold growth. We thought we need to talk about this important opportunity that is provided by the PDM. When I received this topic, I was excited. I said, this is closer to home in terms of what all of us perhaps understand very well in Uganda, but how can this opportunity, the PDM, parish development model, become a sustainable driver of the desired transformation from subsistence to the market economy? I thought reflecting on the the terms is very important. We scholars like to reflect a lot on the terms. When we talk about opportunity, we see that this is time. We understand this in terms of time. And so what does it mean? We need to utilize the time. I will not go through the outline, but this is what I'm going to cover. Reflections on the concepts, the key ones. I'll talk about briefly these ones, the PDM opportunity itself, and then the pillars, and then how does it become an opportunity for us? I said time is very important, and we all have to appreciate that we are working within a limited time. When the decision is taken that the parish is targeted, and the residents of the parish are targeted, and they become recipients of cash to invest, to grow, we must think about the time when this is happening and what we need to do within this time. So it's an opportunity that we can pursue the desired goal of transforming subsistence producers to join the market. And this is a desire of everybody, including those being targeted themselves. But how are we doing that? So we have the current questions. How have the past interventions supported or facilitated households to move from subsistence? And I'm not going to provide evaluative data here, but reflections on how have they managed or how have they not managed to get this group of people out of subsistence production to the market economy, and what kind of actions would help to turn the PDM, which is the current opportunity, into a real opportunity for sustainable transition. And we are saying sustainable transition because we think this is what we want to achieve, and this will be a great contributor to the greater goal of the tenfold growth. The reason is we have understood that this is a persistent problem. Many people staying in this quintile, if I can use the economic terms, income quintile, they are at the base, they are poor. Estimated around 3.5 million and 39% of the household. This is the estimate. This is a big population, and we can say, who are they? I don't know whether we know them. I think we do. But here we are saying we need to know them better because my last point there, because if you go into the literature about how these poor people or these households are, they are characterized negatively. One, they live from hand to mouth. This is what we see. So they don't want to invest. When they get the cash, they like it to consume it. They have limited access to land. They are not educated or they have low education, and name it, but they are also a critical resource for tapping into the needed change. And this comes from the background of where I'm coming from as a profession of social work. How many times do we think about these subsistence producers as a resource? The parish development model has conceptualized this as a resource because where are they? They live in peripheral environments. Most of them move long distances to get to the tarmac. And I'm trying to speak about my practical experience in the country. They are not connected to networks, but they are producing for subsistence, so they are living, so they have energy. And the parish development model is taking funds, and the aim, the goal, is socioeconomic transformation for wealth creation and employment generation. This is the goal, which is a good opportunity. And we need to ponder about this goal, and so then, what do we do? The goal is looking at doing something that is going to promote more universal inclusion as a program compared to some programs that have not been that universal, and we can name some of them. They are not bad, but we've done them. So maybe the impact of this is what is leading us to the current question. Can we now then target everybody and target every parish? There are so many parishes. We have over 1,000 parishes that we are talking about. So this is also going to supplement existing government programs. There are many. In local governments, there are many. There are also those that are being done by communities themselves. But what we see is that the parish development model has a potential to build and strengthen institutions at the grassroots level. These institutions that I know that we all know, we have the family, we have the village, we have so many associations, we also have social services provided by government, and the people. The people I have highlighted here are the human resource. What are their attitudes? How do they think? How do they act? Are they with us in this movement? Money is allocated to each parish, and this money will belong to the parish. So the citizens of the parish receive the money. And I thought about the importance of thinking about local economic development, which I know, Chair, that this is also part of the local government mandate, at least as far as I know. So when we say local economic development, we are talking about the local and we are talking about localities, and we need to study these localities. We know there are 7 pillars. All of us are converted about the 7 important pillars. I don't have to go through all of these, but we look at this as what has been conceived as the theory of change or the theory of transformation, 1, 2, up to 7. And each of these, well researched, have influenced the decision. But we have to keep answering some questions as stakeholders, as people interested in the transition. How soon? And so until when? This comes back to the issue of time, the opportunity that we have in terms of time, because currently we are receiving these funds and they are going to the parishes. And number 2, how are we purposing to learn? Learn from this opportunity or unlearn the past and learn again. So each of these pillars, 1 to 7, are important points for generating the necessary learning. And for example, pillar number 3, which is what is in advanced stages in terms of implementation, the financial inclusion pillar. Its overall goal is to sustainably transform subsistence households into the money economy by easing access and use of appropriate financing. I cannot evaluate at this time, but I know researchers and research units interested in PDM are already trying to find out how is this working. So if you look at number 1, community organization, there is need to do a bit more here beyond the organization of associations for savings and credit, the SACCOs. Why? These are communities, these are people in the communities, they are drivers. So if we look at these individuals, households, the members of these groups as critical drivers, we need to do so much work with them. And I know in the previous slide, we have the mindset change and cross-cutting issues, which will target the minds of those receiving the resources. But we want to say more about community organization as a key input into the needed acceleration for change in terms of the PDM. So what have we learned? I'll just quickly move through this. We've learned that past and current strategies have ensured funding key sectors. And we can continue to do this. But We are also aware that there is underutilization of infrastructure which is provided at the local level, good services that are provided by the public sector. Why? Because of the characteristics of the communities that are accessing these facilities, the capacity to utilize them to grow economically is still very low. We also know that there is continued dependency. So the minds of most of these people in subsistence are not within their capacity, but they tend to think about what is coming, including what is coming from government, and PDM is one of them. So beneficiaries lining up for services, people mobilizing themselves for resources around so many identities, the youth, the women, the orphans, and sometimes even tribal identities. We also know that large firms can be anywhere and invest and take over some businesses that some of these people could do. And then, most importantly, we know that the labor, the 3.5 million plus who are in subsistence production, would also constitute labor. How are we able to put this labor to performance? And if we are talking about agriculture, Mr. Chairman, this is the area where we need the majority of these people to be productive and to have and experience productivity in the agricultural sector, because this is what the majority of them are doing. So, but if we ask ourselves questions, the current opportunity, supposing government decided to suspend PDM indefinitely, what about if this happened and went on, and we are not learning and documenting lessons at the micro level to see how we can improve the implementation? We would lose the opportunity. And so, and I'm saying we need to do more. There is already a lot that is being done, but what more can we do? I think that we need to think a lot more, Chair, about this important principle of subsidiarity, which tells us that decision-making authority is best placed, one, where responsibility for outcomes will occur, and that is at the parish level, because I know parishes are located within sub-counties or urban councils and districts. And number two, in the closest appropriate proximity to where actions will be taken to produce the outcomes. So the investment in a parish, it seems to be asking us to do more. And how? Maybe we have to connect this PDM much more with the theory around local economic development and all these strategies. These should be communicating. Excuse me.
Is there any problem?
Okay. Okay, so I'm trying to put forward the important point regarding emphasis on learning, and I'm suggesting we need to explore and pilot implementation science, which is a good methodology that allows us to learn as we implement. And this calls for continuous data collection, data analysis, decision-making, and action. This will help us to quickly impact the mindsets and behaviors of these households without waiting for a year or two to undertake evaluations on whether these interventions are working. We could pilot this, and I think the PDM should also be intentional to impact the villages in terms of how villages and communities are organized, beyond formation of circles, strengthen collectivism, make sure that people are together, because we can't avoid conflicts, but we need to move as a unit, as a community, as a parish or even village. There's a lot of work that will need to be done there. And as I said, we do not know so far how communities are managing. We do not know how whether conflicts are being managed at different levels. So we need more work here and to strengthen what seems to be elusive, but which all of us would want to know. When government decides to support families and communities, how do we interpret this? How do we come on board as stakeholders, even those who are at the recipient end, building the whole philosophy of the love for the country, and that's patriotism, and wanting programs to succeed. To be able to do this, we need to target the recipients because they receive a lot of information that may undermine their effort to see results out of this. And we are thinking that important human resource at the village or parish level, the CDOs and the parish chiefs can be made to become greater champions in driving this effort because they are like front desk personnel that are interacting with the recipients of the PDM funds. So, but do they have the capacity to manage the conflicts, the misconceptions around this? Are they moving with the people? Are they able to collect and provide feedback on time? We also think that we need to mobilize training and research infrastructure that we have, especially at the universities, which are many and scattered all over the country, over 50 so far, and challenge these universities to make a contribution towards the implementation, monitoring, and understanding the effectiveness of this program. How we have a number of resources. We have researchers and we train graduate researchers, but we also have what could be bothering many of you, what we call internships in the universities. Every university will send students out to try out something, and we are talking about students from all the different disciplines that we are offering here, from business to engineering to social work to social sciences. How can we tap into this resource? And we are conceptualizing this from our side as mentors and tertiary institution trainers. This can be this can be achieved through charting out good university community engagement collaborations that bring about so many stakeholders and bring about practitioners, researchers, and local authorities and the communities together to conceptualize and interpret some of these targeted goals like mindset change. If we are talking about challenges related to use of acaricides that are fake, how are we managing this problem at the community level? If we try this, how do we test to see that it is working and we can give feedback to sectors that could have engagements around this? Now, this becomes a little bit more costly than the conventional ways of collecting data at the community level. We should task some of these institutions and universities, spread around the region, but by working and collaborating very well with the local government and other institutions. This framework just reminds us that there is a lot of wealth at the community level in terms of more than 7 capitals that are there that we tap into, but sometimes we do so without thinking about their relationships. We have tried to look at this in some of the projects that we have implemented. We have financial capital, the PDM is giving us resources. Political capital, we have leaders there, we have goodwill. We have social capital, the people, the human beings that are there, the human capital which you want to invest in. Cultural capital is important in many places. You'll find, for example, in northern Uganda, you'll find clan leaders are very important as an institution at the village level in terms of guiding practices. And natural capital, when you talk about the ATMs, definitely the minerals come here, but also the land is part of what we'd consider the natural capital. So how do we work through a mechanism of implementing PDM, looking at how these different capitals at the community level, at the village level, could be harnessed to produce a healthy ecosystem that is vital for the economy, social and socioeconomic well-being, and therefore have this contribute to the greater goal of the, tripling the GDP. I just wanted to share my research experience in northern Uganda, where before you begin to say, I'm going to do my data analysis and see whether this kind of work leads to good results, and then I can take time to do the analysis and come and publish, or maybe have a conference like this one. The actions were being taken while we were engaging these communities on a topic around keeping children in school. And you can imagine the decisions that they took. But implementing bylaws at the village level is very challenging. So the support needed to ensure that what the communities have decided to do, if we say, for instance, that we don't want bars to open before 3 p.m., it might be very difficult if the leadership at the community is not empowered very well to implement such interesting bylaws that would actually contribute to human capital productivity. We know how it is a big problem. We know how it's a big problem when it comes to drugs and alcohol abuse in Uganda. But this only happened in a meeting where the clan leaders were around, and through an engagement over what is eating away the interest to keep children in school, they were raising this question. I said, what can we do about this? So through an engagement process, decisions were taken, but I'm very sure they cannot easily be sustainable, because after they have taken them, there are challenges of enforcement. So who supports them? And in this experience also, a water source which had failed to be productive in 2 years was fixed in just 2 hours at a cost of 40,000 Uganda shillings, because the researcher looked at the importance of mobilizing a community to fix a contextual challenge. A water source is not functional, but within just hours and spending a little bit of money on the researcher's stipend. That's me when I was doing my PhD research about 10 years ago. This changed me a lot in terms of how we think about vulnerability and how we think about the resources that are untapped at the grassroots. So supposing we made these human resources productive, there would be very great changes. And the other, again, in another community engagement research project in eastern Uganda, it was on free-range chicken production. If we talk about free-range chicken, many of you are investing in poultry farming. You say, why are you telling us about free-range chicken productivity? But this was an amazing project where chickens were dying in that community because people did not know how to use vaccines, and the vaccinators were not easy to get. So some training, some skilling led to an increase in survival, but now the problem was the thieves. He said we have had an increase in survival, and so most households have chickens, but now we are suffering. Thieves from other parishes are coming to steal our chickens. Then I said, okay, so how can we address this? We need to work with the police. Then I started thinking about community policing. I said, oh, this is an area. I read about this, and I said, we can now promote community policing and save these chickens and save the incomes of the people and enhance consumption of, protein by the kids and so on. I think my time is up. I know you have, I could quickly maybe skip this and say we need to pay attention ongoing, if you allow me, Chair, ongoing conversations that might eat into or eat away the resourcefulness of this PDM, because some of the narratives are negative. We need to deal with this, and this is social. I think I talked about the importance of building collectivism at the community level. This is an important issue to build more consciousness about the PDM, its importance, its resourcefulness. Communities can do things together, you've seen that, and they can even understand why some of their members are falling into poverty and others are escaping poverty, and they can propose actions to deal with this. We've tried social labs to engage communities. We think we can do more of this using the social labs methodology to engage people to think and to engage communities to look at the change that is desirable, and we can pilot and test and provide even greater evidence using these participatory methods to achieve better results in terms of the PDM. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mugumya, for elaborately bringing out key issues. And I'm very excited because I was very keen to hear the negative trends, but apparently most of them were positive trends, and therefore I'm very excited. I just wish to add that local government normally provides alternative solutions to a number of issues. And maybe one thing I should say before I leave my tenure is that in the tenfold investment, I think there should be a high consideration of investing in local government, which normally has a theater of developing solutions. For the Kampala being slow and dense, we created cities, 10, we want to even create more, 5, and we are urbanizing, even going downwards. Now, for the solutions to investment into what can deal with poverty issues, we already have the local government system. The LOC structure provides some opportunities which we have not actually taken advantage of. For example, we have about 71,727 villages in Uganda. And in each of these villages, there is a governing structure there called the LOC1 Executive Committee. And this LOC1 Executive Committee has 11 members who are supposed to run the day-to-day business affecting the people in that jurisdiction. And out of those 11, there is one portfolio which is Secretary for Information, Education, and Mobilization. If we could use that one in every village, invest in that one, and we have used that portfolio to mobilize people, to inform them, to pass on information, it would reach the population. And then there is also a portfolio of Secretary for Production and Environmental Protection. No one takes advantage of that one. And that same structure is also replicated at the parish level, where we have PDM and we have about 10,500 over parishes. So in other words, that's another opportunity. As we invest in the tenfold, if we can invest in this governance structure, these live with the population and they can be able to answer some of the questions that Dr. Mugumya mentioned. The other issue is that he mentioned about local economic development. We already have a local economic development strategy at the Ministry of Local Government, which we follow. And also, we have now created what we call LEDICs, Local Economic Development Investment Committees in each district. And these are meant to be able to profile production potential, production patterns, what works, what doesn't work in each of our 135 districts, the 10 cities, municipalities, and the rest. So these are opportunities. And then finally, of course, another important opportunity is that PDM has provided an answer to the development jargons or development products that we always talked about even in the past. You remember we talk about seed capital. PDM funding is a seed capital in a circle. For example, like now we have 200 million out there. This money will never come back to Kampala. It remains in that parish. Also, things like matching grants. You remember I was going to talk about matching grants. So to me, PDM really provides these opportunities. And I thank Dr. Mugumya for really elaborately bringing out these issues, but also throwing questions, which I think we shall handle during plenary. Now, without much ado, I want now to invite the discussant, Madame Juliana Chuna from International Growth Center, to come and take on the audience. Juliana, you are most welcome.
Thank you, Honorables, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I would like to echo some of the key messages that we heard from our two speakers and chair today, as well as add some personal reflections. So we've heard about the potentially daunting, and I want to highlight potentially daunting statistics that Uganda is rapidly urbanizing. So projections indicate that in the next 30 years, and again I'll highlight that, 3 decades from now, For the first time in the country's history, most of the population will live in urban areas. We know from international experience that this process cannot, and in fact should not, be stopped. So why is that? Why does urbanization matter for economic growth? Why are we even discussing this here today? Number one, as we heard from the speakers, is that no country has ever attained middle income status without urbanizing. There is certainly a lot of catch-up growth potential that is related to the demographic transition and rural to urban migration that's undergoing in Uganda, and which was emphasized yesterday, is likely to be compounded by climate change. But going back to the fundamentals, which Victor was discussing, we've heard that cities, they provide the spatial connectivity, which brings people together to share diverse ideas. They connect firms and workers and allow for the exchange of goods and services, effectively creating hubs of innovation and trade, and allowing firms to add value beyond the primary sector, and thus moving up on the value chains. But thinking about the primary sector itself, which is so important to Uganda, they also work as platforms to connect rural economies to local, regional, and global markets, and the parish development model speaks very much to that objective. Now, on the rural-urban link, I wanted to emphasize how urban and rural development go hand in hand, so they do not have to be competing policy priorities. If urbanization is successful, rural living standards also stand to gain, as each person in rural areas will have more land on which to work, and increasing urban demand for food also raise rural earning power. So to summarize, the government's growth strategy fundamentally depends on whether urbanization is successful. As we heard from the speakers, and as our own experience of Kampala shows, while urbanization is a necessary condition to achieve middle income status, it is certainly not a sufficient condition for sustained improvements in living standards. In other words, it does not automatically translate into prosperity, and we've heard about some of the urban costs associated with agglomeration. We also heard about how decisions about the city's physical characteristics and infrastructure today will lock in long-term consequences for the future. And that's primarily because the costs of retrofitting infrastructure are substantially higher than infrastructure is laid out before urbanization takes place. For example, Professor Victor's research has shown that Kampala's slow traffic today is greatly explained by the lack of road infrastructure, investments, and proactive planning in the past. So we've heard a lot about industrial policy in the conference, but strikingly, not so much on how these objectives critically depend on the fundamentals of getting urbanization right. So for example, how can trade objectives be fulfilled if road infrastructure lags behind? How can business investment be unlocked when there's so much insecurity around urban land rights? And without these clear land rights, how can households potentially use land as a collateral to access credit? How can workers effectively commute and access all the job opportunities available if cities are congested and therefore labor markets fragmented? How can we raise labor productivity if air pollution in urban areas is so detrimental to health? How can businesses be created and grow without the necessary energy and ICT infrastructure? In fact, some provocative thought here, could investments in connectivity infrastructure actually be more effective at times at improving ease of doing business rather than more traditional industrial policy tools? So what I'm trying to get at is that urban and industrial policy are fundamentally linked. A good way of conceptualizing this is to think of the rising cost of density as an effective indirect tax on business productivity. And so policy should be working to remove this indirect tax on business. Now, going back to the parish development model and the importance of developing a system of cities, we've heard that while Kampala will remain Uganda's economic growth engine, it is certainly unrealistic to expect that all job opportunities will be in the capital city. And so what can we learn from the past mistakes, and how can we make sure that not only Kampala, but secondary cities are well resourced to plan ahead and accommodate urban growth which again is inevitable. It will happen in the next 3 decades. So while I certainly do not want to imply that this is an easy task at all, focusing on getting this core urban policy right should be a top government priority and a key part of Uganda's growth strategy. I'll finalize with some last words, that this will entail engaging in often extremely difficult conversations on land tenure overlaps, effectively implementing land use plans that account for urban growth, with planning regulations that take into account the enforcement capacity in Uganda, as well as Uganda's income levels, thinking about how land and regulation all connect to determine housing affordability, confronting the lack of mass public transit options, which will be necessary to improve urban mobility, as well as many other areas such as clean water provision and solid waste management. And I know we have some researchers in the room very interested in engaging in these topics. So to wrap up, as a representative of IGC Cities at Work, I just wanted to say that we're more than happy to engage with policymakers across all levels of government in some, or in fact, all of these issues. And we would be happy to facilitate discussions on some of the key lessons learned from other countries, which are also undergoing rapid urbanization and structural transformation across the region. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Juliana, for squarely and adequately tackling these 2 important presentations in a very short time of only 5 minutes. Now, time is not on our side, but I think fairly we need to give room to the audience which has been listening to these presentations to bring out questions or issues and clearly point out if it's for Victor, if it's for Dr. Mugumya. So please, over to you. I can see Onayo Mchitare. Is there somebody with, oh yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Chair and your distinguished panelists. I am from National Planning Authority, a board member. I would request that the next engagement with our long-standing friends, the IGC, should look at the greater Kampala metropolitan conurbation, as opposed to only Kampala, but also with the other cities, because we already have the other cities which we should be looking at, and National Planning Authority now also takes responsibility for the National Fiscal Development Plan. So it's important that we look at it holistically. Secondly, for my chair, Chair has just confirmed that we have over 70,000 LOCs? LOC1s.
C1s, villages.
I think the debate should be, do we need service deliveries? Do we need to be more governed and more representation? Because I thought if we went for cities as economic hubs, municipalities and town councils would not have necessarily have so many councillors and politicians. We lose a lot of money through that delivery mechanism, and yet we could partner with, for example, this country, by Constitution Article 178, is supposed to have regional governments with headquarters at the cities. So there are supposed to be 15 cities of the regional government. And these are the economic zones. We should talk of the industrial parks. The linkages, we are talking about the densities, the markets, and then consolidate the land for production. You had a debate yesterday with the HE in Gulu. That's the line we should be taking. I think even PDM, if we did not seem to be competing, local governments competing with already existing synergies of cultural institutions and the faith-based, we would have more traceability and less corruption with all these efforts, because there is proven performance that the faith-based interventions have done much more than our politician delivery mechanism, which normally goes to campaign managers and it has its own problem. So I think we need to rethink how we intend to deal with this challenge. Why is it important to look at these regional cities, not as political formations, but as economic hubs? Because these areas also, by God has endowed them as in a peculiarity. They are also economic, agriculture has zoned them. They are different ecological zones. So you can actually give them a specialized value chain producer kind of economy, so that even if you're going to make intervention in Chigezi, which is highland, you give them specialized 5 crops, give them the necessary inputs, the advisory, and even the PDMs should have recruited advisory extension workers and fiscal planners instead of just employing everybody as a parish chief. Now we are looking for who will do that. So I think this debate is very important, and if we can, Chair, you can help us to pursue my unfinished business of regional government tire as an economic hub for, we should, even this Kampala congestion would not be there, because every region has a potential to produce, to have an industrial park, to have skilling and the right vocation and specialization with a good cooperative for every region. And I think that's the best way to deliver, because this approach of thinking every LOC will do some work is very laborious and may not give us the results we want.
Yeah, thank you very much. As we pick others, I just want to mention that we may have got stability here because of having had a massive participatory or inclusive governance structure. Now, removing it, you may end up spending more money in conflict resolution and also managing disagreements, but it's subject for debate. Thank you very much. I can see in the middle there, you can mention your name. Let's start from here, the middle lane. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Mine goes to Dr. Faminas Mugumia. My name is Peter Balimunsi. I'm from the Uganda Free Zones Authority. Chair, I appreciate Mugumia's submission of that social side of it, which sometimes we tend to miss out. I noted from that one of the experiences in Eastern Uganda, where there was improvement in chicken rearing and so on. And then I went back to his first definition as he was starting. He defined the opportunity. There is that group of chicken thieves. Those chicken thieves saw an opportunity. But unfortunately now, from a wrong perspective. The conventional way would be now to start investigating, take them to police, maybe to court, maybe if the community got them, they would beat them and so on. But you end up not solving the problem. I think from your approach, the best would be also to get them, to understand them and get them involved in this chicken rearing enhancement program. I would like to know, beyond what you presented, how that part was handled. Thank you, Chair.
Julius, time is not on our side, but we'll try to see how to cater for everyone. Julius, it's not working? Yeah.
I think let's use this. Okay. Thanks, Chair. Two things, and very quickly. One is on urbanization. I think thanks, Victor, for the data, but in a way that an ordinary person can understand it. And I think for other presenters, we could take a lesson from that. But Chair, for me on PDM, I think there are two things that have been mentioned which I think we need to take on. One is the issue of using the local government structures to solve our problems at the local government level. And I think the 10 growth strategy needs to take that into consideration, because we need that local governance structure to help us achieve this bigger dream. Lastly is on PDM, I think, Chair, the question of marketing. And I think if we don't solve that, then the opportunities we are looking for in PDM, we are likely not to achieve it. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julius, for that. I should also inform members that in our decentralization structure in a local government, we have what we call a technical planning committee. And this committee is comprised of 9 heads of departments: planning, finance, natural resource, and these are at assistant commissioner level or scale U1E. So in organized districts like Mbarara, like Chiruhura, like Lira, you'll find you have a robust of 9 professionals whom, if you supported them with big investment in the tenfold, they can do wonders by responding to issues at the community level. Thank you very much. I can pick our colleague. Yes. It's not working? Can we try to borrow from the neighbor? Yes.
Let me take advantage of the NPA's charity to the IGC in sharing a microphone. You know, Victor, I was really amazed at the, that I really hadn't thought about the importance of housing construction with respect to urbanization. In fact, it's going to grow even much more rapidly than perhaps the growth rate of GDP, certainly. The construction sector and the numbers that we've seen for Uganda is also growing very rapidly as a source of labor absorption. Many of the migrants that are coming in from the rural areas are going into the construction sector. So it's a terribly important industry. It's also a terribly important industry from the standpoint of demand links through the economy, the demand for cement, the demand for wood, the demand for skilled labor. I wonder what you would have to say about the role of the construction industry and what sort of policies we should begin to think about it beyond just of course, the 4 target industries. Behind that, of course, is this massive industry that will drive urbanization growth, as well as exports. When you look at the export of services, for example, through the lens of the WTO numbers, we find that construction services are terribly important. Now, they're primarily driven out of South Africa, Nigeria, and sometimes Chinese companies. But I think this is an area where Uganda could really take advantage of its growth opportunity and that sort of demographic urbanization dividend to push the industry. Any thoughts on construction?
Thank you. Time is not on our side, but for gender purposes, I would be very glad. Yes, Honorable Sechitoreko.
Thank you very much. This time we have a talking chair. Now, chair. How do you define, because this question is coming to you, how do you define a city? Because you went and chose some towns and made them cities. Exactly what did they have which made them cities? Then how do you define a town council? Because I look at some town councils, like, okay, I will not name any for political reasons, but you go to a town council which is really huge, and there is not a single stadium, there is no playground, there is no place where anybody can go to relax. That is one. 2, I'm glad I'm speaking after that, the gentleman whose name I have forgotten. Do we have a plan on land sharing? Of all the Uganda land, how much is going to go to real estate? How much is going to go to roads? Because when the first presenter said, in Kampala we drive slowly, not because there are many of us on the road, we all knew what he was talking about. The roads are so tiny and we have got more vehicles. So how are we planning for these new cities? Are we going to have that same congestion? Because I haven't seen any plan. Is there any plan for these towns and cities and whatever? Finally, some time back I heard of something called one parish, one commodity. And of course, in the world now, there is one country, one commodity. What is happening with that one commodity for each parish? I'm asking this because when PDM started, I come from four parishes, because being a married woman, you are born here, you married there, you work in Kampala, so those are three parishes. Now, so I went to all those parishes and asked, what is our PDM money going to do? I started with Chavadas at the headquarters of ginger growing in Uganda. And I was told that the Chavadaza people were told, that is Utambala, were told that ginger is not a commodity crop, so it cannot be funded under PDM. So for them, they were like, that's the end of Chavadaza. So what exactly, how do we get in with our one commodity? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will hear from the other corner, but all I can say is that the parameters for a city and town councils is well enshrined in our constitution and the Local Government Act and the National Urban Policy. But I request that during coffee break, I will offload those extracts so that we can continue the debate. Let's hear from my colleague the other side.
Okay, thank you so much, the PS, for the opportunity. My name is Bonnie once again, and I teach at Makerere University Business School. My question goes to Victor. Dr. Victor, thanks so much for sharing a very insightful presentation, but what are your thoughts about the urban poor in a city like Kampala? If you try, maybe in your statistics or in your probably a comprehensive paper, did you try to look at the behaviors and characteristics of these people? Because when you look at Kampala, it accounts for people who are excluded from what we call the middle class. They also live from hand to mouth. They can't access the decent housing, the decent meals, but they stay in Kampala. So in your call to action, how do we deal with such people? You know, and then also when you look at the Kampala metropolitan, it's also now having what we call the urban and peri-urban. You look at Mukono, you look at Wakiso, it has now those other populations who travel specifically to Kampala to earn a living, but they walk. You know, we have a railway system, which is sometimes functional, sometimes not functional, but people use it as a trail to walk to Kampala, and then they go back. They do this every single day from Mukono to Kampala, and they walk back. They can't afford. What are your thoughts about these people? And some of them, they have found themselves having makeshifts in the city to share the spoils of what the city can offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it is fair, although we could have a second round, but I think it is fair, more subjects to your guidance. I think we need to, 2 more? Okay, 2 more, we'll go to those 2 hands. The other corner. We'll start from the one in front and then we'll go to the one behind. Thank you, Maurice, for that relief.
Thank you. My question goes directly to Dr. Victor about urbanization. So as urban areas grow, the demand of social services such as health care, education, mentioned a few, also increase. Can Uganda's social service infrastructure handle this demand, or there is a risk of decline in service quality? Of course, we also have to know that if agriculture is a backbone as well, we need to know whether there is a balance of agriculture and urbanization as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then the final one, yes.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Capson from the NRM Secretariat. My observations are general. Maybe this will go to the PSST. I'm excited about the tenfold. And if you see, the tenfold will span 3 elective seasons. And I come from the background of the NRM manifesto, being an important document that should drive planning for the subsequent electoral seasons. So I'm actually just calling on the PSST to link more with the NRM Secretariat for the purpose of capturing some of the milestones of the tenfold into the NRM manifestos Subsequently, NRM has about 2.5 million leaders in its structures who, if spoke for these programs, would accelerate the implementation and therefore support the growth. I was just bringing that to fore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me now to invite Dr. Victor, if you want to say one winding word or PSST, yours.
His mics don't work. Okay. Thank you. Victor, thank you for the paper. Very, very, very illuminating. On the urbanization and the GDP growth, how did you test for causality? Is it the urbanization which drives GDP growth or the other way around? Because in the past papers I used to look at when I was still teaching, there was that dark causality challenge. How did you solve it here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Victor, the floor is yours for any concluding comment, remark, or statement. Victor.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be very brief in my answers for the sake of time. I'll start with the last question from the PSSD about causality. I'll just acknowledge it's a very good point. It's a chicken and egg problem, but I think as Juliana said, there are no cases of countries that reach middle income without having urbanized first. So we can think of it as a necessary condition. If people stay in rural areas, there are no theories, there are no examples of that leading to middle income status. But it is possible in theory to have a country that urbanizes fast and doesn't become rich. So let's think of it as a necessary and a sufficient condition. There's a causality issue, and this hasn't been established in the literature. It's not possible, just infer that from data. And then back to Richard's questions about what government can do to support the construction industry. I'll just say briefly, it's hard to get the regulation just right. If you under-regulate the industry, you get shoddy buildings built all over the place and a messy urban structure. And if you over-regulate, if you overtax, you are preventing small entrepreneurs who tend to join a construction building from operating. You are opening the door for all sorts of anti-competitive practices that lead to corruption and waste. So getting the regulation right is hard. And then someone asked about the urban poor, and I'll just briefly acknowledge that, yes, not everyone gains from rural-urban migration. Many people, quote-unquote, fail. And this is obviously a problem. And the more small entrepreneurial type business are possible and not hampered by over-regulation and taxes, the more opportunities for them to be successful. And you're quite right about migration from rural area to urban areas being sometimes temporary. During harvest season, they can work in rural areas and then come to urban areas to work outside the harvest season. There's research on that showing that it benefits villages when people do that. And then there's a question about growing demand for social services. Well, I'll stop here. Just acknowledge that, yes, demand for social services rises when cities grow.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Dr. Mugumya.
Thank you, Chair. I think I got one question from Peter Marimunsi. He also, fortunately, volunteered an answer. The issue of, I think yesterday there was a conversation about the importance of respecting personal property and investing in ways to make sure that people feel secure and their properties are secure. So at the micro level, at the community level, this is what our research showed us, that people fear to produce or invest even as small as having 10 birds in their compound because they are worried about the thieves and they don't want to sleep with the chickens in their houses because that's perhaps the only way they could survive. So we actually thought about how then from this research can we engage with the police and the police engages with us in the research and the community to be able to have a sustainable way of dealing with these thieves, because they have a program called community policing. But we know that it is also very difficult for this to be rolled out all over the country. But really people want their properties safe, and that's what the research taught us. So in this area, if we talk about PDM, productivity is going to increase, but what will we do about the issue of people fearing to produce because they are going to cause insecurity in their households, and so they choose not to produce or choose not to even mention how much they are. And I think it's an important area, and as I said, we just have to keep ourselves and our ears open to see what are we going to learn as we implement the PDM and how we're going to act and how much time do we need to take to act. Can we quickly think about the implementation science bit, and maybe if it is too hard and tap into this, because I know how easy it is for those different institutions that do research, especially universities, business schools, agricultural institutes, they could make they may not do everything, but they can make a contribution. And this study actually was funded by the Ministry of Finance through the Research and Innovations Fund. And this program is still going on, but only Makerere so far is benefiting, and I believe hopefully it will be rolled out so that we have more questions coming and we test this through different approaches to getting the evidence, including the question that the Honorable asked about the one commodity, one parish. It's still a question, so how do we address this? Maybe going forward we could see how the feasibility for this would work, and we challenge localities through local economic development who have specialized and have competencies in producing certain commodities to do that better, and maybe ask for services that fit into what they can produce best, and also demand for how they can have their products access markets if the marketing dimension is also tackled. Thank you, Chair.
Juliana, you have a statement to make to the audience? Yeah, thank you very much. I want to really thank the good audience for really listening into these presentations. I want to thank the presenters. I just want to end by making two statements. One, that this debate we are in is a debate that is real, and if you want examples that are real, that are local, come to local government, because we always want. And I want to share with you three. First, I have a farmer in Chibare who got 1 million, and he bought broilers, and within 6 months, he sold and got 3.5 million. This is a real situation, it's alive, and it can be a good example to prove that PDM works and everything works. Two, I've been also informed that now, as we talk, there is a lot of market for pigs in Congo. There's already a market. And that if you buy a piglet at 100,000, between 7 to 8 months, you get 1 million. And this information can be verified. Then finally, I want to share with you, yesterday I had a meeting with Nyakana of Ruengaju, a man with a thrilling history of what is possible and what is not possible. He started with 2 chickens. They multiplied to 27. They multiplied to 50. He has 10,000 birds now in that journey where he started, and I captured everything. And then a few years back, he changed into a Frisian, and he started with 1 Frisian. Now he has 11. Now from his 10 birds of a person who started with 2 chickens, he produces 140 trays of eggs per day, every day, but he's also producing 140 liters of milk per day. And this is a live story, live film. You only need to come and I take you to where he is, and then you will prove. But also at the same time, he's doing chicken feeds. He has now a mini factory producing 1 ton per day, and his 0.7 is used within his own facilities, and then the remaining he sells. And now I have co-opted him. He's going to be our trainer on local economic development and PDM. But the most important thing is not going to be a trainer based on requisition. First requisition budget to facilitate him. He's going to be a trainer based on passion. And his dream is he can only wish to see so many Nyakanas across the rural communities of this country. So I just wanted to share with you these local examples, and I want to inform you that if you want more, please come to Ministry of Local Government. So finally, in the tenfold, let's invest in urban roads and urban infrastructure for Kampala and other cities. Let's invest in PDM. Let's invest in decentralization. We shall have solutions for the people of Uganda. Thank you very much. My tenure has ended. I would have wished to be here, but I don't have the control panel for remaining here. Thank you very much for being a very good audience.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for the PS and his panel. May we have a group photo? The camera, yes. The photo guy is here. Please, PS, with your team at the front of the very last stair there. We'll have a group photo. And I really want to request that we once again appreciate our panel. Can we give them a round of applause? We appreciate the speakers and our discussant. And I think Dr. Victoria said, and the live chairman, the live chair, and the talking chair of this session, in her words. PS here helped me remind me, she said talking chair. And it's exciting, he gave you live, and he called them films. Those are live films of what's happening in the community. He can take you to Rwengaju and show you the true picture of what PDM is doing for our people. Please do take your seats, and I'll invite the panel and our very highly distinguished guests to coffee. I am allowing for 10 minutes of coffee. Pick your coffee and return. Pick a bite and return to the set. And when you do, I'll have a very nice small exercise for you. Lawrence, I don't know, do we have another exercise for you? If you came in and you did not participate in our, can we have that QR code for the photo moment? If you didn't participate yesterday, this is your opportunity to ask your neighbor what this is about. I'll ask the technical team to put up that photo QR code where you're able to get your photo. If you didn't come yesterday and you don't know about this, ask your neighbor. This is really cool. This, at the end of the day, will give you your personal photo, or at least a photo where you appear. It could be you talking to somebody. It could have been you making a presentation. It could have been you asking a question. It could be you just, concentrating during our discussions. Then you can actually archive this and share it with your friends and tell them you were at the 8th High-Level Economic Growth Forum, and you will be with us, I guess, for the 9th edition.